I'm Naomi, and I'm a graduate student in the Cognitive Psychology program here at Northwestern University. And I study the way young children learn. When most people see images like these, they see young children having a good time, running around, playing around. But when I see images like these, I see young minds at work. In fact, in looking at these images, I feel impressed by the kinds of learning in which these young children are engaging. These types of playful contexts are crucial for young children's development because within them they gain both knowledge and skills that they need in order to be successful in places like these. This is where my research comes in. I study how young children gain the skills they need for formal education, places like these, within informal learning contexts. Informal learning contexts are basically a fancy way to say any place outside of the classroom that can be both playful and educational. These types of contexts can be anywhere, from a museum to a home, a playground, even a library. And the exploratory nature of these contexts provides children a unique opportunity to gain both content knowledge, things like Googleable facts, and problem-solving skills within them. While I believe that this content knowledge is crucial for young children's development, in my work, I focus mainly on how children gain problem-solving skills within these spaces. From here on out, we can refer to these problem-solving skills as thinking tools. These types of thinking tools are sort of like an internal scientific method. They're everything from being able to walk into a situation and make an observation, asking a question, making a plan to answer that question, making a prediction, testing that prediction, and drawing a conclusion, learning new things and creating more and more knowledge. The beauty of these types of thinking tools is that ideally they can be separated from the content and the context in which they were learned, and young children can potentially use them in a variety of other situations, allowing them to gain knowledge in many new places. We can take Suzy and Josh as an example. Suzy and Josh are good friends. They play with each other on the playground in the evening, and they're in math class together during the school day. One afternoon, they decide they want to try to balance their seesaw. So they create a plan. Suzy can move towards the center of the seesaw, and Josh can move farther from the center. They try out their plan, and unsurprisingly, they find that it doesn't work. So they try again, and they readjust, and eventually they draw a conclusion and figure out how to balance the seesaw. This moment sounds unique to the playground and the seesaw, but when Suzy and Josh get to school the next day and their teacher gives them a challenging math problem, they can actually use the skills that they practiced on the playground in terms of making a plan and trying it and redoing it to answer this math problem. I think that this example highlights really nicely how young children can gain skills outside of the classroom in informal and perhaps playful contexts and have the ability to use them to learn and gain knowledge within formal education. In my lab, we study how young children gain thinking tools within the tinkering lab at the Chicago Children's Museum. This work is in collaboration with the Chicago Children's Museum and a developmental psychology lab at Loyola University of Chicago. This is the tinkering lab. It's sort of like a large workshop space. When children and parents arrive at the tinkering lab, they're provided an engineering challenge. This can be anything, but usually it's something like make a creation that rolls. When parents and children enter the space, they can use the available tools and materials, things like saws, hammers, wood, recyclables, nails, to build creations that match the challenge's functionality. For example, they might make things like this, which do in fact roll. The really cool thing about the Tinkering Lab is that throughout this space, there are a variety of testing stations upon which young children can actually test out the functionality of their creation. So in the Make a Creation That Rolls situation, they can actually take their creation, put it on the top of a large ramp, and see how far and how well and how fast their creation rolls. But building is quite hard. And often when children test out their creation, they find that they have a lot of work to do. So they go back to the drawing board. They redesign, they try again, and they continue to work on their creation. This idea of testing and redesigning brings us really nicely into the engineering design process. This is the thinking tool that young children can gain within the Tinkering Lab. As you can see from this diagram, there's no starting or stopping point of this process, and that's because it's iterative. It's all about having a question, creating a plan, creating, improving, and continuing that cycle over and over again. I think similar to Suzy and Josh, it's easy to see how this process would be crucial within the Tinkering Lab and within formal education, because it allows children to practice and try again and learn how to fail and improve. But interestingly, not all children learn the engineering design process when they're in the Tinkering Lab. And similarly, all parents in the Tinkering Lab speak differently with their young children. So as I move into my second year of graduate school, I'm beginning to ask questions about how parent language might actually impact the way young children learn these types of thinking tools within these informal learning spaces. In asking questions like these, we can eventually provide information to parents and educators on how they can best support their young children's learning within informal learning settings. That way, young children can gain the most out of settings like these. Thank you.